Music is an art form that varies according to culture and social context. Its variety ranges from genres such as rigidly structured classical music, structurally free and modern blues music, richly cultural folk music, to even heavy-sounding and complex metal music. Museologist Jean-Jacques Nattier best puts, the border between music and noise is always culturally defined, and that by all accounts there is no single and intercultural universal concept defining what music might be. The variation in music is just another way one can see the true diversity in perspectives around the world. Nevertheless, similarities can and usually do exist between aspects of different cultures and communities. As there are similarities between ways certain groups of individuals act or perceive certain situations, there are also similarities in the ways communities express aspects of their cultures. There are various dimensions in which musical similarity can be analyzed that are more objective than the obvious similarities in musical genre or social context. This investigation will be comparing two pieces that carry both traditional and Western features. One Rwandan traditional piece, Arihehe, by the Rwandan artist Masamba, and one Punjabi piece, Sounds of the Desert, by Balbir Bitu. Rwandan traditional music's rich background is easily distinguishable through the way it encompasses certain Western as well as East African Afrobeat musical features, which include traditional traits typical to folk songs, especially of that region. Rwanda is a country in which music and dance are an integral part of its culture and traditions, which is why most traditionally composed pieces such as Arihehe, which is a ceremonial piece that celebrates the beauty of a young man and woman, are made so that they can be danced to. The most famous traditional dance in Rwanda is Intore, a dance where drumming is of great importance, a trait that one can clearly see is fundamental to the components of this specific piece. After Rwanda was declared a republic in 1961, as many countries do when becoming independent, Rwanda replaced many of its traditional features with more Western features in hopes of development. Alongside the introduction of its Western political system, Rwanda started to adopt certain Western styles of dress and certain Western cultural features such as style of music. This piece can be seen as being influenced by Western music, especially by its instrumentation. Before starting the analysis, here's the first minute of the piece Arihehe by Masamba.
Bageze bigarama bagara mu murenzo wo kurwana mizo mutwara tangira muze ngabo yanze gushira amakenga ati ndi nkera yabeza atoni cyogere mu kuba ntagome ntabazanye icyubahiro mu iko ndi mu bitoro taganira baratotamye n'ingenzi bari man baba batabaza gushaka ko tagira imbeho umuntu yego aha
Other than its use of the bass drum, which happens to be an ngoma drum, which provides the piece with its pace as well as indicates the change in time signature, all other instruments used can be considered Western. The other instruments present in this piece include a piano, providing the melody with accompanying chords, an electronic bass, also providing harmony to the main melody, an electronic xylophone, which in the piece not only introduces and mimics the main melody, but also indicates the start of new verses, and finally a modern drum as well, due to the clear use of the snare in this piece. There is also a male lead singer, backed up by female and male backing singers. Arihehe has a rather simplistic structure. The piece is in strophic form, meaning the musical form is repeated using different verses of text, but following the original theme. This is shown through the unrelieved repetition of main melody and easy to follow chord progression, with the only variation to distinguish sections of the piece being the change in lyrics and repetition of chorus text. The chord progression is structured as followed: tonic, tonic, subdominant, and dominant, which means considering the piece is in the key of F, the chord progression is F, F, B flat, C, the dominant of C creating instability that requires a tonic of F for resolution. The piece is also homophonic due to there being a dominant voice sung over consonant chords that accompany and provide harmony to the melody line, and the piece also has an obvious major tonality. The entire piece is finely structured, starting with an introduction where the harmony is introduced, and the melody is introduced over the harmony by the electronic xylophone, the verses which occur 9 times in the piece, the chorus which repeats 6 times in the piece, and finally the reciting sections where the lead singer seems to deliver lyrics as if speaking, which occur 3 times in the piece. When analyzing the melody specifically, one can see that it is a clear syllabic motive melody pattern, making it an ostinato. The use of a constantly repeating simplistic tune makes it easier to memorize and is a common musical trait in songs directed towards the masses. A fundamental and interesting aspect of this piece is its percussive rhythm. Arihehe has a clear constant percussive rhythm driving the piece along throughout its repetitive structure. However, its constant rhythm is formed with mixed meters that are constantly exchanging, with an alternation between the compound meters of 6/8 followed by the simple meter of 3/4. A characteristic of East African traditional music is its use of interchanging rhythms and sometimes even polyrhythms, which are rhythms that are used simultaneously. But in the context of this piece being composed for ceremonies and would be typically danced to in the style of Ventore, where the use of compound meters so that beats are paired in triplets are almost always present, these constantly interchanging time signatures fit the purpose of this folk song. Another interesting aspect of the piece is its use of call and response at the start of chorus sections, which is in fact an aspect that is used in both traditional folk music of the region as well as gospel music, a genre, as said before, that has a significant influence on Rwandan modern traditional music. The piece Sounds of the Desert is of the Bhangra genre, Bhangra being an upbeat type of popular music associated with the Punjabi culture. Immigrants from the Punjab region of India and Pakistan developed Bhangra music in the 1980s in Britain. At the time, there was a very concentrated Punjabi diaspora in Britain, and with them came certain aspects of their culture, which in this case is their music. Bhangra music was invented when Punjabi immigrants took traditional folk sound and experimented with other sounds from their host country, which causes for many of such pieces to be both traditionally influenced as well as having a Western influence. This idea of 2 cultures merging together is definitely present within this piece, Sounds of the Desert, especially considering the artist Balbir Bhittu was born in West London and was one of the most famous artists in the uprising of Bhangra music in the 1990s. Before starting the analysis for this piece, here's the first minute of the Sounds of the Desert by Balbir Bhittu. The instrumentation of this piece are typical to those used in other Bhangra-style pieces, which are both a collection of authentic and electronic forms of traditional as well as more Western instruments. The most apparent instrument in this piece is the use of the dole, which is a double-headed drum that is widely used in India and in Bhangra music, and is the percussive instrument that seems to drive this piece. Other instruments include genuine and electronic forms of the sarangi, a bowed short-necked string instrument, the tumbi, a high-pitched single-string plucking instrument, and the algoze, an instrument that resembles a pair of wooden flutes, electronic versions of violins and a bass, and other instruments. It also has a male solo singer and female and male backing singers. Just like Arihehe, the instrumentation of Sounds of the Desert show a mix between cultures and influences, including both traditional instruments as well as more Western instruments. The structure of this piece also has similarity with the Rwandan folk song. It has a rather simplistic structure as well, however it is more complicated than Arihehe. The piece is in a time signature 4/4, and it starts with a drum solo, which introduces the upbeat pace of the piece and is followed by accompanying instruments. There are 3 sections of the piece that seem to repeat themselves throughout the piece, with the first instrumental section, which consists of the Sarangi playing a melody line for 8 bars over accompanying percussion instruments, followed by the Algoze mimicking the 5th and 6th bar of the Sarangi's melody, repeating this for 4 bars. This instrumental section repeats about 4 times, interchanging with the second instrumental section. The second instrumental section is similar to the first instrumental section, except it has more development, and the tumbi is now playing as the instrument carrying the melody from 0 and 51 seconds. For 4 bars, as well as electronic violins that take the melodic line from the tumbi at 58 seconds. This instrumental section is repeated 3 times throughout the piece. The last repetitive section of this piece would be the verses of the song, which other than changing the text are the same for each repetition. It consists of a male solo singer for the first 8 bars, where it is then responded to by either female or male backing singers, which also interchange throughout the piece. The verses repeat 6 times. After having analyzed the structure of this piece, one can clearly see the similarity between this piece and Arihehe, with their heavy dependence on repetition being a common trait of both types of folk music. The use of a constant percussive rhythm provided by the dole, which is a 16th and 8th note combination that creates this gallop-like rhythm, adds to this dependence. This repetitive use of the dole's rhythmic phrase allows for an easily predictable rhythm. However, there is evidence of the use of irregular phrases in the harmony, most evident in the backing voice phrases. At 44 seconds, the backing voices come in for the first time, singing a phrase of actually 6/8 time signature on top of the surrounding rhythm of 4/4, evidence for the use of cross-beat polyrhythm in the piece. A fundamental and interesting part of this piece is its use of components of the Phrygian mode. Sounds of the Desert is a modal piece that can be seen by its functional harmony, and uses the Phrygian mode being a scale that maintains the note makeup of a natural minor scale, however it adds a lowered 2nd degree, or in the case of a major scale, contains a minor 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 7th degree. Sounds of the Desert, therefore, is in a C Phrygian mode. It is these changes in degrees that provide the music with this Middle Eastern character. Well, now that we have analyzed both pieces, what similarities can we conclude correlate both pieces with one another? The most distinct similarities that have been analyzed in both pieces are most definitely the use of repetition in the components of each piece's structure and their rhythmic importance and consistency. Through both pieces' ability to continuously repeat motifs and rhythmic figures, the piece is then able to be more memorable for the listener, which, considering both pieces are stylized as folk music, would be the masses. Too much repetition in cases can be seen as detrimental to certain pieces. However, due to the fact that both these pieces are for ceremonial and dance purposes, the repetition supports the purpose of the music. The repetition in both pieces also is an indication of both pieces being traditionally influenced, with limited repetitive melodic and rhythmic figures being a feature of both Rwandan and Punjabi folk music. Both pieces also show the strong importance of rhythm and its consistency. They both have sections in which highlight drumming, in Arihehe at 2 minutes 51, where voices are only accompanied by drumming, followed by a short drum solo, and in the Sounds of the Desert, with a drum solo that starts off the piece. Both pieces adding some level of complexity to their rhythms. With percussion being a highlighted instrument in both Rwandese and Punjabi culture, it makes sense that traditional pieces would highlight this factor. The featured rhythmic figures, again, also add to the idea that both pieces are to be danced to in a specific manner. Finally, the use of call and response is used in both pieces, adding to the folk song tone of these pieces. Though both pieces seem rather traditional in terms of their makeup, there are certain aspects of both pieces that show some kind of Western effect, the most evident being the instrumentation and how Western instruments have managed to make their way into these traditional pieces, which can be a similarity in itself. Although both traditional pieces initially seemed completely different in their overall composition, through musical analysis, one is able to not only see the similarity between two traditionally composed pieces from completely different regions of the world, but also can see how Western influence has had an effect on modern folk music in recent years. I hope you've enjoyed my musical links investigation, and thank you for listening.